The new ownership of the Boston Celtics is now official, and while many thought this process had been sealed months ago, the truth is that the NBA world has only just entered a new reality. The takeover by Bill Chisum and his powerful group of investors is not just a business transaction. It is the kind of seismic event that reshapes how we think about the future of the most iconic franchise in basketball history. The number is staggering, nearly $6 billion United States dollars, and with that kind of investment, it was never realistic to expect that someone else would be making the key decisions. The official statement came yesterday, confirming what many had speculated, but few truly understood. After unanimous approval by the NBA Board of Governors, Chisum officially became the principal governor of the Celtics, while W.Y.C. Grousbeck and Aditya Madel were named as alternate governors. Grousbeck will act as co-owner and CEO, overseeing daily operations with Chisum, alongside the existing basketball and business management teams. The ownership group is a constellation of powerful names, from G.B. Mattel and Bruce Beal to Maria Ho and Ian Loring, supported by the global investment giant 6th Street. What does this mean in practice? It means the Celtics have transformed into something larger than a team. They are now a platform where sports, finance, and global influence intersect. The question that nobody can yet answer is whether this signals the beginning of an era where NBA franchises are no longer owned by individuals with passion, but by global investment groups seeking to shape the game on an entirely new scale. The timing is impossible to ignore. The Portland Trail Blazers are currently up for sale, and while they are not expected to reach the astronomical value of the Celtics, even their price will likely exceed $4 or $5 billion. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Lakers recently changed ownership for nearly $10 billion. Suddenly, professional basketball is not just about banners and trophies, it is about whether billion-dollar groups will redefine what winning even looks like. Now, the spotlight shifts to the challenge that lies ahead. It is never easy to inherit a franchise with 18 championships and a fan base that lives and breathes expectation. And this group is beginning its journey under brutal circumstances. Cost-cutting is unavoidable. Roster turnover has already removed veterans like Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, and Luke Kornet. And most dramatically, the Celtics will play their first season without their superstar and MVP candidate Jayson Tatum. At first glance, it may seem disastrous. But is it really? Or could this be the ultimate opportunity disguised as hardship? The logic is cold but undeniable. If the Celtics had pushed to trim salaries while still fielding a healthy Tatum, critics would have accused them of sacrificing wins for profit. Now, with Tatum sidelined, the ownership group can frame the reset as a strategic pause, an intelligent recalibration rather than a retreat. They can say, "We were not going to be at full strength this year, so let's invest in the future." For a group that just spent billions, this is the kind of perfect narrative cover that few organizations ever get. Yet Boston is not a city that waits patiently. The Red Sox are the cautionary tale. After years of championships, the moment fans sensed that John Henry was cutting back on investment in talent, the backlash was swift and merciless. The same will happen in basketball if the Celtics appear hesitant to compete. That is why this season is less about wins and losses and more about perception. If the teams start strong in a weakened Eastern Conference with one of the easier schedules in the league and Tatum's return is on the horizon, will Chisum's group strike boldly at the trade deadline? Or will they resist temptation and stay loyal to financial discipline? Those decisions will define whether this ownership era begins with trust or tension. History weighs heavily here. The Grousbecks delivered championships from the era of Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Rajon Rondo to the era of Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They earned the fans' loyalty. Now that the mantle has passed, the expectations are clear. When the air around the Boston Celtics feels heavy with silence, and that silence is almost deceptive. We are in late August, deep in the offseason, and yet underneath the quiet surface of news and rumors lies a storm that could reshape not only the 2025 to 2026 campaign, but the very direction of the franchise for the rest of the decade. At a moment when the spotlight seems dimmed, the real drama is taking place in the shadows, and the questions that matter most are the ones that have no easy answers. Today, let us confront 5 of the burning questions that could decide whether this season is remembered as a transitional step or the beginning of something that will astonish even the most seasoned observers. The first question is the one that has been whispered around every corner of the league since June, and it is as intriguing as it is unsettling. Will Anthony Simons remain in a Celtics uniform for the entirety of this season? Boston did not acquire him by accident, and it is not by accident that his name keeps surfacing in trade rumors. His expiring contract worth $27 million is more than just a financial number. It is a chess piece, one that could open doors that most teams are desperate to push through. The Celtics know that in the current system of escalating tax penalties, financial flexibility can sometimes be just as valuable as a star player. But here is the real mystery. Do the Celtics see Simons as a temporary trade chip or as an untapped weapon who could thrive next to Jaylen Brown and eventually a fully recovered Jayson Tatum? His scoring ability is undeniable, his athleticism breathtaking. But what remains unknown is how his talent translates when the weight of winning is placed squarely on his shoulders. For years, his numbers came in situations that lacked pressure, but what happens when every possession in Boston will matter to an entire city? The second burning question circles around health and strategy, specifically the workload of Jaylen Brown and Derek White. How many games should they truly play in a season where expectations are more about building than conquering? The temptation will always be to push stars to the limit, but perhaps this season demands restraint. Imagine a scenario where the Celtics choose preservation over desperation, where they protect their key players for the battles of 2026 and 2027 rather than chasing wins in February of 2026. That choice could mean frustration in the short term, but in the long run it may save careers, extend primes, and give Boston the durability needed for another championship window. The decision is not as simple as resting or playing. It is about how much you are willing to sacrifice now to dominate later. The third question burns with possibility because it asks something fans have been waiting for years to see. Which of the Celtics' young players will break through and reveal himself as the next cornerstone, the unexpected diamond in the rough? Every great Celtics era has been defined by unlikely heroes who rose at the perfect moment. This roster is filled with names that the broader NBA world barely knows, but history tells us that those are often the ones who surprise. Hugo Gonzalez brings an intensity that cannot be taught. Baylor Shyman has the skill set to become a dangerous shooter if his development finally clicks. Jordan Walsh carries defensive instincts that could make him a nightmare for opposing wings. And Josh Minott has the athletic profile of someone who can rewrite a career trajectory in one season. The uncertainty here is not weakness, it is opportunity. Somewhere in this mix may be the player who, years from now, Celtics fans will point to as the hidden jewel of this transitional era. But which one will step into that light first? That is the suspense that makes this season worth watching. The fourth burning question goes beyond the hardwood and dives into the financial battlefield where modern championships are built or destroyed. Will the Celtics manage to get under the luxury tax line by the end of the season? It may sound like a technicality, but in reality, this decision could shape the next 5 years. Right now, the team sits roughly $12 million over, and the new owners know that escaping the repeater tax clock could give Boston back the financial weapons it needs to reload around Jayson Tatum in his prime. The challenge is monumental. Few teams are capable of absorbing the kind of salary Boston would need to move, and pulling off such a maneuver may require creativity that borders on the impossible. Yet if it is achieved, the Celtics will suddenly have access to tools that contenders rely on, like the mid-level exception and increased trade flexibility. This is more than saving money. It is about buying options, buying the freedom to strike when opportunity arrives. The final question is perhaps the most emotional of all. Will Jayson Tatum, the face of the franchise and the symbol of its modern glory, return to the floor this season? Logic says no, caution demands no, but hope is relentless. Even as he recovers from what Boston Celtics have just completed one of the most polarizing off-seasons in recent memory, yet not in the way that fans had dreamed of when the summer began. Instead of adding more firepower to chase another championship, the franchise executed a radical financial reset. Kristaps Porzingis, the unicorn center whose size and skill set reshaped the Celtics' identity in the paint, is gone. Jrue Holiday, the defensive maestro and clutch performer acquired at great cost only a year ago, is gone as well. Even Al Horford, the wise veteran who had become part of the Celtics' cultural DNA, was allowed to walk away in free agency. What might sound like the end of a window, however, may actually be the beginning of a more carefully engineered era, one that hides possibilities no one is ready to predict. The financial reasoning is clear. Boston had climbed far above the dreaded second apron, a level of salary cap punishment that suffocates roster flexibility. Once Jayson Tatum suffered the devastating Achilles rupture that will keep him out for the entire 2025 and 2026 season, the front office was forced to confront a reality that would have been unthinkable only months earlier. The franchise chose to sacrifice short-term stability for long-term survival, accepting the pain of losing recognizable names in order to buy breathing room and reset the balance sheet. This was not a panic liquidation, but rather a calculated dismantling with a future still to be written. What emerges from this new structure is a puzzle that feels incomplete, a canvas with one section painted but many blank spaces waiting to be filled. That is where the name Anthony Simons enters the storyline. Acquired in the very trade that shipped Jrue Holiday to the Portland Trail Blazers, Simons arrives as both an immediate contributor and an uncertain piece in the larger design. League insider Jake Fisher revealed that Boston is not finished reshaping its payroll and is still willing to hear offers for Simons. The statement was precise yet open-ended, suggesting that while the guard could be moved, his presence also holds value if Boston decides to keep him as part of transitional core. Simons is entering the final year of his contract, worth $27,700,000 for the 2025 and 2026 season. That number is significant because it places him directly at the intersection of flexibility and limitation. For a team already shedding salaries, committing to a guard with such a price tag can appear risky. Yet there is another perspective, one that makes Simons far more intriguing than his stat sheet alone suggests. At just 26 years old, he carries the combination of youth and experience that is rare in this league. He has already played 70 games last season, averaging 19.3 points and 4.8 assists while logging more than 32 minutes per night. His shooting percentages paint a complicated picture, with 42.6% from the field, 36.3% from deep, and a staggering 90.2% from a free throw line. On paper, the inconsistency is evident, but in practice what stands out is his ability to create instant offense, to swing momentum in bursts that very few guards in the Eastern Conference can replicate. The curiosity here lies not only in his raw production, but in the way Boston might reimagine his role. In Portland, he was often asked to be the engine of the offense, carrying responsibilities that magnified both his strengths and his flaws. In Boston, especially with Tatum sidelined, the environment will challenge him differently. Can Simons thrive when the spotlight is brighter, when defenses prepare for him as a primary option, and when the standards of Celtics basketball demand a blend of efficiency, discipline, and clutch execution that not every scorer is built for? The answer to that question is not obvious, and that is exactly what makes this offseason more fascinating than frustrating. While many fans see subtraction, the front office may see an experiment, a year that tests the limits of players like Simons before making decisions that will echo across the next decade. Boston can choose to keep him, allowing him to prove whether he can be more than a temporary solution, or they can leverage his contract and scoring reputation to acquire another piece at the trade deadline. Either path is viable, and both leave the future hanging in suspense. It is worth remembering that the Celtics' long-term strategy is not confined to a single season. With Tatum expected to return healthy in 2026 and Jaylen Brown still locked into his prime years, the opportunity to reload around them remains alive. What happens now is less about giving up on contention and more about gathering the information needed to shape the roster that will take the floor when the team is once again whole. Simons is one of the test subjects in this process, and the experiment could either elevate his career to new levels or transform him into the trade chip that unlocks Boston's next star acquisition. For the Celtics, every move in this offseason is part of a layered narrative that outsiders cannot fully grasp yet. The departure of big names hurts in the short term, but behind the curtain, the team is creating a path where flexibility meets opportunity. What if Simons adapts to Boston in ways few expect, becoming a versatile scorer who complements Brown perfectly while buying time until Tatum returns? What if his value peaks mid-season, attracting offers that bring in a younger frontcourt piece or a playmaker who fits the next championship timeline? The beauty of this moment is that the outcome is hidden, and the anticipation is almost as thrilling as the games themselves. The story of this offseason is not about loss, it is about the daring decision to test uncertainty, to believe that from temporary instability can come lasting dominance. Anthony Simons is not just another guard on the roster, he is a question mark that could become an exclamation point.